Hey guys, welcome to my video. So today I'll be going through my everyday makeup routine, my go-to makeup and what I use on a daily basis. I am new to YouTube, so please bear with me. If you don't know me, my name's Jordan. If you like my videos, then please feel free to give me a like below or even subscribe if you want to see more. I am planning to make more videos soon, hopefully maybe some hauls. So what I do with my makeup routine is I start off by doing my skincare, wash my face, tone, serum, moisturise, all of that. Once that's all dried down, I then move on to primer. So the primer I use is the L.O.V Hyaluronic Serum Primer. Serum Primer. Radiant Glow, immediate skin hydration, pores appear tightened. Basically, I suffer with oily skin, so I used to use the Hangover TooFaced primer, but at the moment, because I'm oily, it's bringing out them oils even more, so I moved on to the L.O.V primer. So I apply that, squeeze it on my hand, put it all over the face. I have already applied that, so I'll move on to my next step. So I'm going to clip my hair up out my face. Once I've clipped my hair out the way of my face, I move on to my eyebrows. So I use the Got To Be Glued water resistant spiking glue, men's hair wax basically. I put some on a brush and then I apply it to my eyebrows, spiking them upwards. I do this because it gives the effect of laminated eyebrows, which I love, but it's a much cheaper option. Once my eyebrows are all brushed up, I then take the very edge of the brush and sort of go around the edges of the eyebrow just to give the top spikes a bit of a curve, just so they're not too harsh. And then I also just spike up the front of the brow. So once my eyebrows are done, I then move on to concealer. So concealer is the first thing that I do when it comes to my base. I use the TooFaced concealer in the shade Almond, the multi-use sculpting. I'll place a bit under my eye, under my chin, on my forehead, and along the nose. Once that's applied, I get my beauty blender, any beauty blender, really doesn't matter, and some setting spray. I just use any setting spray that I have. I need to get a new one, so I'm not going to recommend what I have because it's not the greatest. So I blend that in. Under the eyes. Bring it down. And also apply some to my Cupid's bow. Most people start with foundation, but I've seen a TikTok where someone started with concealer and cream contour, gave it a try and have never stopped since because it did make a difference on the way I applied it, and it also saved me on the amount of foundation that I use. Once my concealer is applied, I move on to cream contour. So I use the Pro Conceal high definition concealer, but I use it as contour and I use it in the shade Toffee. So I apply it to a palette and I get my Morphe flat-headed brush and dab into it so you're not picking up as much product, and start to contour. I also contour under my chin and along the jaw. So then I apply a contour to my nose, but I just go straight down the bridge. So once I've finished applying the contour, and that'll look like this, that's when I move on to foundation. So the foundation that I use, usually if I'm tanned, is the Born This Way foundation in the shade Light Beige. This is a tad too dark for me, and the foundation is a little too dark for me. I then mix it with the Fit Me Maybelline Matte Poreless foundation in the shade Porcelain, add a small drop, mix them together, and I get the right shade. So at the moment I'm very pale, so that's what I'll be doing today. I then grab my kabuki brush, the Sigma F80 brush, another flathead, and I use this for my foundation. So I put my foundation onto a palette, mix it together the same as I do with the contour, and then I'll just dab into that ever so gently. I don't need much product, and I'll start to work that in. Always work it down your neck so you don't look like you're two different colours. So once all the areas that I want covered are covered, I use what's left on the brush and just work into that edge where the contour is, just to make sure it's not as harsh when you set it. And then we'll contour the nose properly later on. So once my foundation's on, I then move back to my eyebrows. So I'll get my eyebrow pencil, which I use the NYX Professional Makeup Micro Brow Pencil in the shade Espresso. And then I get the pencil and work brush strokes into the eyebrow, just covering sparse areas where I can. And then I'll also fill in a line from the front of the brow. Any mistakes, don't worry about it, because I'll get the concealer and I'll clean up underneath anyway. So just go along with it. So from that line that I've done, I'll draw hair strokes upwards. Just blending that in. Once I've worked the pencil through, they will look a bit messy. I use the spool at the end of the brush and just blend through lightly, trying not to disturb the gel underneath. Once my eyebrows are done, I'll get the same concealer that I used on my face and get it on a small brush, small flat-headed brush, and sculpt around the inside of the eyebrow. Once my eyebrows are done and as similar as I can get them, I'll then move on to setting my eyelids. So I use the P.Louise Rumor 03 eyelid base, and I'll squeeze a small amount onto each one and then work that in with my finger. And once I've spread it around with my finger, I then also use the same concealer beauty blender and just pat it down, making sure there's nowhere missed and no creases, and also blend out that concealer. I then move on to setting powder. So I use the Laura Mercier powder just in the translucent. I do want to get the honey. So if any of you would recommend that, please let me know. Just get a fluffy brush, pat into my Laura Mercier powder and set my under eyes. I do leave the powder quite heavy on the skin without blending it out, just so it can brighten that. Then I also set the rest of the concealed areas on my face. I work some of the powder under my cheekbones just to brighten that area a little bit. And I also work it down my neck. Once everywhere is set and also the areas that I want brightening left to bake, I'll move on to bronzer. So I use two bronzers. I use the Nars bronzer in Laguna. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. I only have the mini one because I thought I ordered the big one and the mini one came. That is still lasted me a long time. If you're looking for anything on the cheaper side, drugstore, then I use the Collection Bronze and Glow Mosaic in one Sunkissed, which is actually amazing for the price. So I'll start with the Nars. I'll get a fluffy angled brush and just work that into the cheek. I do also bring that up into the forehead and where we contoured on our jaw and chin. So then I'll get the Collection Bronze Glow, tap into that. This just adds a bit of shimmer. I don't really use highlighter very much, so this is for my added bit of shimmer. Then with a small fluffy brush, I take the Nars contour and start to work that into where I'd like to contour my nose, keeping it close to the centre to make the nose appear smaller. Once I've contoured my nose, I then move on to highlighting my nose. So the highlighter I've got at the moment is the Collection Gorgeous Glow highlighter. I haven't used this for very long, but I haven't found a good highlighter that I like. I like a champagne-y coloured highlighter that's not got any speckles in it and is quite natural. So if anybody can suggest a highlight to me, please do. I also highlight my inner corners. Once they're more highlighted, I then get my Revolution palette, which is the trio palette. I'm not sure if they still bring this out, but it's the Moonlight Glow. So I get that palette, and then what I take out of this is the blush, which is like a peachy blush. I'm not that keen on bright coloured blushes, so if anybody also has a suggestion for that, please let me know. And I'll just work that into the apples of the cheek. I then move on to eyeshadow. So the eyeshadow palette that I use is the Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette. It's just her first launch. I don't have the new one just yet. The two shades that I take into first is Silk Cream and MFEO. I'll pick them up with a fluffy brush and work that in to just above the crease. I also work my eyeshadow upwards just to create a fox eye. I'll then pick up Butter and Roxanne and work that into the crease, just underneath, blending that in. I'll then get a brush that I'll use for the darker shades and pick up Buns and also Chip, and I'll work that in to the inner corner, bringing it out. I don't always use eyeshadow, but when I do, this is what I use. And when I don't, I just normally do a bit of bronzer on the eyelids, just to make them warm. Then what I'll do is I'll take a small angled brush and dip into Chip and also Soda Pop. I'll flatten that down between my fingers and start to create a wing. Once I've done the wings, I get the Peaches and Cream lip pencil in the shade Hotline, and I'll draw a small point in the inner corner. Once the wing and the inner corner is done, I'll get what's left on the fluffy brush with the dark shades and just blend out the lid and also blend the wing into the rest of the eyeshadow. So I'll get the same fluffy brush that we used for the translucent powder, just wipe away any excess powder from underneath the eyes. Once any excess powder has been removed, I then use my setting spray and set my face. A little tip for anyone that feels as though their setting spray clings to either peach fuzz or the actual powder that you've applied, get a unused beauty blender and just push the setting spray into the skin. It helps it to sit into the skin instead of on top of the powders. Once everything's set, I then move on to my eyelashes. So I apply mascara, but before I apply mascara I curl my eyelashes. But something that other people may not do, or you may not have heard of, is I get my eyelash curlers and heat them up, either with leaving them between my hair straighteners or heating them up with a lighter, and just dabbing them down just to make sure they're not too hot for the skin so they don't burn your eyelids. By doing that, it may not even be a thing, but I feel as though my eyelashes are dead straight, so if I do that, it's the same as curling your hair. You're adding a bit of heat to try and make that curl last longer. So then I get my mascara. So the mascara I use is the TooFaced Better Than Sex mascara. I do prefer to use the Benefit Roller Lash, but I've run out, so this is what I use at the moment. The Roller Lash just makes the curl of my eyelash last longer. Once the mascara is applied, I leave the bottom lashes for now, and then I get the Morphe eyeliner gel in the shade Jet, so the black eyeliner gel, and go along my waterline and also try and define that inner corner. Any mistakes, just neaten that up with a cotton bud. So then I move on to eyelashes. So the eyelashes I use are by Unicorn Cosmetics, but I don't remember the name of the eyelash that I use. So I'll try and leave it down below if I do remember, or if I find the eyelashes that are similar. So I'll go ahead and apply the duo glue to one lash, put that down, then apply it to the other one. Once I've done that, I'll pick up the first one because it should have dried down and gone tacky, and apply both of them. And then I'll apply them. I do love the unicorn lashes. If anybody has a certain style that they like to use and would recommend it, then let me know what your favourite unicorn lash is to use. If I do want a more natural look, I will go for the Morphe eyelashes, usually in the style Hollywood, which you can get on Pretty Little Thing. Once they've been applied, I will get my eyelash curlers and just seal them together. Once they're applied and also curled up, I'll then apply mascara to my bottom lashes. So once the bottom lashes are done, I then move on to lipstick. I don't apply any eyeshadow on my bottom lashes just because I feel like it creates a droop in my eye. I'll then get a cotton bud and clear up my lips of any concealer or foundation. Because I do have lip filler, I don't overline my lips very much at all, but I'll work in the same lip liner pencil just around the edges of the lips. And then when it comes to actual lipstick shades, I either use the NYX Butter Gloss or a MAC Retro Matte lipstick in the shade Burnt Spice, and the Butter Gloss is in the shade Madeleine. So today I'm going to use the Butter Gloss in Madeleine. And then with any lip brush, I just clean up the edges. So that's my whole go-to makeup routine. Hope you enjoyed my video. I will leave all my Instagram and details down below. I'll try and link all the products that I've used and use links to where you can get them from too. My hair, this is how I like to wear it. This is what I usually do on a daily basis when I'm wearing makeup. I like to curl it, have it a bit wavy, and then brush it out. So this is what my routine usually consists of. Anything else you'd like to see from me, please let me know. I'm happy to take suggestions in the comments, and also any questions, anything that you want to ask or anything that I can help with, please let me know. But it was great to have the chance to be able to film today, and also to build the confidence to actually make this video. So I hope whoever watches this appreciates it. I'm not a makeup artist, so please don't think that I know everything that I'm talking about, because I don't. But this is my routine and this is what I like to do. So hopefully I've helped some people or even gave anybody some inspiration. Thank you for watching, and if you've got this far, then I really appreciate it.